Domestic violence is a category of crimes that are committed. It's not a specific crime itself, but it's attached to other crimes that get committed. It's an identifier. And it can be just about any type of crime that you can think of, anything from homicide, assault, criminal damage, disorderly conduct, sexual crimes, and also interference with court orders. It can become aggravated if it's done over a period of time in a series, and it's usually cyclical, means that it typically starts out small and increases over time, where the violence increases, the frequency of the events increase. So the 11, 12 homicides that we've investigated since we've been a police department, 9 of those were domestic violence related. 9 of those 11 homicides were domestic violence related. That means there was some type of relationship between the suspect and the victim. The relationship between the victim and the defendant is one of marriage or former marriage, or a person residing or having resided in the same household. So spouses, domestic partners, roommates, all of those fall under domestic violence. Domestic violence is not an issue of anger management. It's not an issue of environment. It's not an issue of upbringing, religion, culture, creed, or anything else. Domestic violence is an issue of control and coercion. Being a victim is one of the most demoralizing and degrading, and it robs you of all your self-esteem and your ability to have any type of feeling of control over what's going on around you. But we want to look for those signs, we want to look for those hints. When people say things that seem odd or different, or it doesn't seem like it's meshing with how relationships should be, then we need to be empowered enough to be able to talk to them and help them understand and find out if they're really in those types of relationships, and try to help them mitigate that situation in their lives.
On average, it takes, takes 7 instances of domestic violence to a court before they even consider leaving. I mean, it could happen once and they could say it's enough, but a lot of people go back, or a lot of people stay. Why do you guys think they stay? Why do you like your house?
Security.
It's security. Why do you like yours? What's good at home for you?
Comfort.
Comfort. Anyone else?
My dog.
Your dog. Your pets, which is a big thing. So a lot of it.
Where else are you gonna go?
Where else are you gonna go? So when it comes to leaving a relationship, there's really never a perfect time. It becomes something for an individual to make that decision. It's important to let them know, if they're not ready to leave, that you're there to support them, that you're there to care, and that you listen, and that you be non-judgmental with them about wishing to stay in the relationship. Identify what you noticed has changed about them. Have they stopped hanging out with friends? If you're a parent, have they stopped talking with the family members? Are they going out? Are they only, when they're out, are they constantly on their phone? Are they constantly getting text messages or phone calls from someone? Speak on facts that you've noticed and not on your opinions. Have a plan where your birth certificate is, where your social security cards are kept. And a great place for a woman to keep those things is in the tampon and pad boxes, because what abuser is going to go searching through those boxes? And then always give them resources. Like one of our great resources in our community is Against Abuse. Give them the resources. I know they have packets out there. Take one with you. If you see someone that needs it, I'm sure there's a shoe card in one of those. Pass them the shoe card. It'll give them the hotline that they can call. And even if they're not ready to leave, they can speak to someone at the hotline about safety planning and what their next steps could be, and maybe set up a time to speak with a counselor or an advocate at the shelter. Talk about them enrolling in something called the Address Confidentiality Program, where they can hide their address. Educate them about the court process. There's some pamphlets on the police department table about what an order of protection is. It's actually written to a low level, so you can pass it out even to a teenager. Talk about residence-related information. Let's say a person is in a domestic violence relationship and they have a lease, and they're afraid to leave because they have a lease. Arizona state law protects them, and they can actually break the lease without any consequences if they've been a victim of domestic violence.
Well, let me just introduce myself if I could. My name is Jim DiVenezia. I'm from New Jersey, if you hear the accent. Okay, I'm from New Jersey. Moved here about 13 and a half years ago. Back in 2009, I've worked in behavioral health for close to 40 years with children and teenagers. Back in 2009, in the newspaper, I saw the picture of the victim assistance program, the volunteers. And then I was fortunate enough to be able to now be employed by the city of Maricopa as a victim advocate. And I started, this is about being with people on the worst days of their lives. The worst days of their lives. And that stuck with me back in 2010 when I first started the volunteering and the training. And even up to this day, the people that we're going to be responding to on the potentially the worst days of their lives. One of the victims, the anxiety level over here is up here, PTSD is up here. To always have to walk on eggshells, always have to be what's going to happen next, what's going to be happening next. When I respond to the scene, when Mary does, when the officers do, when Mike or Sarah respond, or even our volunteers, to actually speak the language and be able to say to a victim, right, you don't deserve what you're going, you don't deserve this. And immediately when you say that, it's not just this sympathy, oh, I'm sorry that, I'm sorry, but it's that empathetic response that says, you don't deserve this. This is not fair, the way that you're being treated right now. And it makes a connection that I think is going to be the emotional drive and cathexis in a certain sense to make us more and more effective with the work that we do. Leaving is not an event. It's a process. And when you think about that, what is our typical, well, hopefully not our typical response to people going through domestic violence, going through the victimization and bruising and the injury? Why don't you just go? Why don't you just go? Why don't you just leave them? The DVERT program that we have, that we're heightening our response, is Domestic Violence Response Team. Every domestic violence call gets responded to by the police department. Either I would respond, Mike, Sarah, Mary has responded many times herself too. Every response, domestic violence response call is going to have a response. Sometimes it could be a phone call to follow up, just to check in, just to see how things work, or maybe one of the volunteers called on the scene at that time to be able to respond with packets of information to be able to give out. We look at it from a certain perspective. They look at it as, this is my life. It's my life. Don't disregard what I'm experiencing. This is my life. Think about what it would feel like if your offender was going to say to you, or even not say it to you, but perhaps even to your face, I'm going to take away every one of those things, maybe one by one. I'm going to take them all away from you. And you can't do one thing about it. You think about if somebody is a power freak who's going to get this order of protection when they're in Florence, and the judge is there, okay, you sign your order of protection. They're going to sign this and they're going to say to themselves potentially, if you think that these conditions of release on my own recognizance mean anything to me, you're crazy. All right? I'm going to do what I want, when I want, and many times that offender is going to go back to that house and just say, open the door, let me in. The coercion, the intimidation, the power and the control. And it's so obvious to me that, and apparent to me, when actually sitting down with the victim and saying, did your boyfriend, for instance, check your phone or demand to see your phone? Did your boyfriend or your husband, or even on the other side, did your wife require you to give the password to the computer, to their phone? Well, yeah, they did, but it's because they were caring about me. Well, let's take a look at that. What about finances? Did they give you an allowance? And so, I mean, all these sort of things. I'm going to be the one in this house that has the power. I'm going to control what happens. I'm not going to be angry about it. I'm just going to be intimidating, and I'm going to be powerful, and I'm going to manipulate you, and I'm going to get my way, because I'm the one that's in charge here. All right? You're not going to like, or maybe you will like what I say or do. It doesn't matter to me, because I'm going to control this environment anyway. Because when you add that element of power, control, manipulation, especially with the teenage girls, for instance, talking to them, oh yeah, my boyfriend doesn't want me to wear certain things. It doesn't like when I dress a certain way. Doesn't like when I talk to certain guys. That jealousy and that whole notion about, right, you're mine, you're my property, you're objectified. Our relationship is not based on emotion and love. It's to be objectified. And that's the element that is very, very unique when it comes to domestic violence, with the power, control, and the intimidation. When you say that to people, when you ask that to victims, their eyes get wide in a certain sense. And it's like, you're right, this is what's happening to me, it's what's happening. And one way that the police officers do this too, when they go out on the scene for a domestic violence call, they use a screening tool called the Intimate Partner Risk Assessment. It used to be lethality screening, but as of
April 1st.
April 1st, it's the Intimate Partner Risk Assessment.
When we respond to domestic violence cases, in our response as a police department, we always go with at least 2 officers and a supervisor, typically. Domestic violence is just that. It's oftentimes violent. And we are intervening as authority into a situation where people typically have a problem with authority. They don't want that power taken away from them, and we represent that. We represent power and authority from the community. We have to get information, we have to get details, we have to ask questions, we have to take pictures, we have to do all those kinds of things that the investigation does, so we can gather all that information so we can decide if a crime has actually occurred, right? Does it fit the statute for assault or for criminal damage or for stalking or whatever it might be? And that usually includes victim advocates. It could include family advocacy center, SANE nurses, forensic scientists, all these types of things. What happens at a family advocacy center really is designed as a hub, one-stop shop for domestic violence, crimes against children, and sexual crimes. Okay, they have CPS, they have forensic scientists, they have detectives, they have family advocacy, they have victim advocates, they have court advocates, all in the same place. So we can take victims to one place and they can receive all these services at the same time, so trying to parade them around to different places. At the direction of our chief, Chief Stahl, and under his direction and the hard work that our victim advocacy program has done, we're going to open in our own family advocacy center right here in Maricopa.
Wow, that's wonderful.
Yeah. The police officer's job is to be able to develop a case so that the offender is held responsible for their actions. Whether it's male, whether it's female, they're held responsible for their actions. If they break the law, then they get prosecuted. At least prosecuted to the extent that we can. In 2013, the Maricopa Police Department was selected as a pilot program for the for the Pinal County Attorney's Office for strangulation investigation. There was a new law that was enacted that made strangulation a domestic violence component in the law. So if somebody strangled another person, aggravated assault, DV, there's specific prosecution for that. Is it preventable? Yes, but people have to do that. Police, family and victim advocates, and even you can't do that. People that are in those situations have to decide not to be victim or not to be an offender. So hopefully this conversation tonight has sparked a thought in your mind of somebody that you might know, a friend, a family member, a colleague, somebody that you might think, hey, it might just be worth me reaching out to that person and saying, hey, how are things really going in your life?